Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on how to use Prewave for achieving EUDR compliance for the automotive suppliers. In general, I have to say, I guess you are all aware of that. EUDR is not just another piece of regulation. It's a quite defining factor for the future operations of companies, and especially for supply chain resilience and also parts availability. Unlike regulations like LKSG or CSDDD, the non-compliance carries or entails far-reaching consequences. In the worst case, if your products won't be compliant anymore and you need them for the daily operations, it can even result in a standstill of factories and assembling facilities. Especially in the automotive industry, the challenges are very, very great, I would say, because there are long multi-tier supply chains. You have to onboard suppliers around the globe. You have to ensure the traceability in order to have coordinated efforts, but also very strong networking effects and so on. And in the end, with Prewave, based on our experiences with automotive customers, with different implementation projects and so on, realize that especially standardization, but especially also collaboration across the whole value chain and across the supply chains is the key for having a success in efficient EUDR compliance as well. I guess most of you are aware that currently there are, again, discussions about the potential postponement. But one thing remains clear, I would say. Implementing EUDR compliance is very complex. We noticed based on many experiences with different and various automotive customers, but also across different industries, and in general, it demands a lot of preparation time. So in general, we say even if it should be postponed, you should still continue pursuing compliance. I don't mean that you need to buy a software solution or something like this, but at least internally, you have to set up the proper structures. You have to continue pursuing EUDR compliance so that you will be compliant in time. This is just as a short introduction. Now, in general, I have to say this will be a very informative webinar about how to use Prewave. But before I'm going to jump into the input and into the topics and present how you can use Prewave as a supplier to our customers, we will have a short introduction where we'll hand over to Jean-Quentin Heitz, Purchasing Strategy Director with Renault Group, and to Radoslav Kuna, who is a parts development manager at Kia, and also to Dennis Tereli, who is an expert in sustainability regulations from the BMW, who will also give you their take on the current situation and also what they expect or how they strategize to moving forward. Before I hand over to those industry experts, I want to define some logistical settings first, actually. And the webinar will be recorded. You will have the possibility to answer questions during the webinar. Those will be completely anonymously. So no one will read who sent the question. And we will do our best to actually answer those questions during the webinar. In case that we are not able to cover all the questions, we are going to, on the one hand, answer the questions in an open Q&A session in the end of the webinar. And with the rest of the questions, we are going to answer them after the webinar and then also forward to you the slides, the webinar recording, and also the answered questions. So now, before I hand it over to my colleagues, I want to very quickly go through today's agenda. So in the beginning, as I said, we will have a brief introduction where the industry experts are going to give you a short statement about their company position with the current legislative status quo. And then I'm going to move you through the different path towards EUDR compliance, depending on whether you're an EU supplier or a non-EU supplier. Then I will explain in more detail how the supplier engagement flow works with Prewave, meaning what assessments will come your way through our customers, how can you answer each assessment, and I will also walk you through the live platform and show how you can answer all of those in order to have a very easy walkthrough and be able to satisfy your customer needs. Last but not least, I'm also going to touch base on the technical integration possibilities, because we at Prewave are also very committed to actually provide a technical integration possibility not only for our customers, but also for suppliers. So I will explain why it is so important and what can be done for you also to very efficiently answer any requests forwarded via the Prewave network. Last but not least, as I mentioned, we're going to have an open discussion where we are going to try to answer all the open questions that are still that were asked during the webinar. We will focus, especially in this section, on answering questions. So feel free to write them down throughout the webinar, but we are only going to answer them in the end. Okay, enough from my side for now. I would hand over to my colleagues. I'm just like looking very quickly. I think right now, okay, Quentin is not there currently, so we will skip him for now, and I would hand over to Radoslav. Radoslav, I think you are muted.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, so good afternoon. And actually, I have to admit, I'm a little bit surprised that I was given some word to talk about. So basically, you need explanation how we dealing with EUDR, or sorry, I misunderstood your point.
Okay, and just like your positioning as Kia on how you see the current situation, what your goal is. I mean, like for example, from the quote that you said, you are fully committed to complying with
I
UDR
see, I
towards
see.
the end of the
All right.
year, and what your strategy is, and also what you expect from your supply chain.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, so my name is Rasul Kuna. Yeah, I am a head of section which is dealing with all EU regulation or legislation. EUDR is one part of it. So when we first time get in touch, let's say with this shortage, which means EUDR, we've been wondering what it is. Yeah, of course, we have to ask our legal department for advice because legals or lawyers usually exactly understand everything. I am from procurement, so it was completely new for me. And so we try when we try to find out how we're going to deal with this one, we, after internal discussion, decide to hire an advising company. Yeah, it was completely new for us. So in fact, we get in touch with an advising company named Taylor Wessing. And what I understood later on, Taylor Wessing is closely cooperating with Prewave, which is kind of, Taylor Wessing is, let's say, advising which kind of duties you have to follow, which kind of documents you have to prepare to be comply with EUDR. And Prewave is more or less the IT solution, which is which can help, yeah, Kia and possible others as well to deal with importing of the products which are under EUDR scope. So after this decision, yeah, we signed the contract, and basically these days we are sorting out some difficulties with the systems, but soon or later we going to use the Prewave system to submit our importing product origins. Yeah, in our case, it's quite. I can say we are quite lucky. We have only 3 part numbers which we importing, which are under EUDR regulation. So after this product product origin statement, we can, I guess, we expect it will be easily shift to EU traces system, I guess it's called, and based on that one, we should get the reference number, which will be necessary for custom clearance, right? So we focusing for as a procurement division, we focusing, of course, for our Kia duties, but our other aim is as well to lead our suppliers which import as well products which are under EUDR scope. So we need to lead this supplier, and we basically, from beginning, it was on a monthly base. Now it's more or less, I don't know, quarterly base, because as you know, there was a 1 year postponement. Yeah, everything's supposed to be ready last year this time, but yeah, after the postponement, we had more time to prepare not only ourselves but our suppliers. These days, we communicate with suppliers basically if they are already starting to prepare a due diligence system. So we review with them, and if there is any requirements or not clear task, we offer them some advices or how to say, discussion via our advising company, Taylor Wessing. So yeah, I would say this is the what's happened up to now. As I mentioned, now we're waiting for further steps together with a Prewave IT solution.
Thank you very much. And we're also looking forward to these next steps.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to hand over to Dennis from BMW.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I don't know if everybody can hear me, but I think it should work, Fabio, right? So
yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Also from my side, I will just have like a quick statement on everything that is actually happening right now in the EU, because as maybe all of you have already heard, basically people talk these days about the EUDR being actually postponed for 1 more year, but it's for us at BMW is extremely important to say that currently we still have to assume that the EUDR will actually come in full force, actually as it's already been planned at the end of this year. To me personally, it seems kind of hard for the basically for it all to be happening like that fast, and that is why at BMW basically we assume that it's gonna that it is here soon as it is right now, and that I don't think it makes sense to basically just chill now and to say, okay, we definitely have the chance to have more time. And we urge all of you to also actually see it like that, and to just make sure that all of us and all of you are actually fully prepared for EUDR by the end of this year. At BMW personally, we really don't think that only having a potential, again, 12-month is helping so much. So this is why we at BMW try to actually change something of the EUDR. We are definitely trying to have some sort of simplification of the EUDR. But yeah, as I say, currently we have to assume that everything will come in full force soon. Yeah, thank you.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Dennis. I mean, like this kind of like also covers our perspective, I would say, because running multiple implementation projects with many customers by now, we realize like that many big parts of the supply chains in the end are not fully ready yet, and it would be like very tough to reach compliance until the end of this year. So there is still a lot of work to do. And in general, with UDR, what we see is there is this necessity for cooperation among like the whole supply chains and among different stakeholders within the supply chains. But okay, then let me move on actually with a very short introduction into what EUDR is about. I know most of you people by now will already have it heard, I don't know, 100 times, but still not everyone is fully knowledgeable of what EUDR entails specifically. So I just like for having like this standard base of common knowledge, I just like want to go through it in 2 minutes. And in general, yeah, the EUDR is a European Union Deforestation Regulation for reducing illegal deforestation and forest degradation on a global scale. The scope are especially companies that import products into the EU market, meaning that buy products outside of the EU market, or place them on the EU market, meaning that they sell products on the EU market or export products from the EU market that are directly linked to 7 commodities. Especially in the automotive industry, very important is natural rubber and wood, obviously. What is required by law is that companies can actually display that those products were produced in compliance with local legal regulations, meaning, for example, it includes like human rights, labor rights, the rights of indigenous people, land theft, and so on. And a part of that, the second big pillar of the requirement is that those products were produced deforestation free, meaning it is necessary to conduct satellite imagery analytics to prove that from the cutoff date of the 30th December 2020 until the production date of the raw commodity, there was no illegal deforestation in the specific plantations of the raw commodity. And that's a very important thing. That's always about the raw commodities, so not about the production facilities, because we often experience that suppliers provide us geolocation information or try to provide us geolocation information with a production facility. But that's not what the EU asks for. The EU wants to have the proper plantations, so the proper geolocations, the polygons of the forestries for wood, of the plantations for natural rubber, and so on. In general, in the future, companies will have to provide these due diligence statements before placing those products on the market or before importing into the EU. The deadline is the 30th December 2025. As we said, there are like some postponement rumors right now, but nothing will be confirmed before December this year. So yeah, it's not that much time to go, less than 3 months. In general, it has always to be proven how the compliance was reached. And in case it was a breach of the compliance and the due diligence statement was not generated in accordance or compliant to the law, the member states will do audits on the due diligence statements. And in case that they find a breach, they can put on financial sanctions up to 4% of the turnover. But what can be even more dramatic or even bigger consequences for companies is the confiscation of those products, because this means that then production facilities could be stand still for some time until an alternative source for these products and commodities was found. I think this should be quite clear by now. So let me now move on to the next part of this presentation or this workshop. And now I'm going first to explain how companies actually have to act or through which processes they have to go in order to reach EUDR compliance. I'm starting like with this big picture, I would say, from the perspective of our customers, so that also their suppliers understand when their cooperation will be needed, but also to understand what are the customer processes and where would be our participation and why is it needed that we provide the information that is requested via Prewave. In general, we always have to differ between EU suppliers and non-EU suppliers because the requirements by the law are quite different. So if our customer, for example, is purchasing from an EU supplier, we are now going to focus on that stream. It will require a maturity assessment. This is like an assessment that's like a self-assessment, an SSA, that will especially evaluate the readiness and also the robustness of the compliance due diligence system of our suppliers or of our customer suppliers in order to evaluate whether they created due diligence statements in accordance to the law. Because otherwise, once we get the due diligence statements from suppliers, we cannot prove, did actually the suppliers really conduct deforestation checks? Did they really check that the producers are compliant to the local legislation? That's why we first do this maturity assessment to check the readiness, but also the due diligence system of the customer's suppliers. Once we get the supplier DDS, we do a traces check via the API, where we check whether this due diligence statement is available and whether also it matches the entire product. Meaning, if we send a request for a rubber product and we get back a DDS for a wooden product, we would send back an error message to the supplier telling him that's like a wrong DDS. In case that we conducted these 3 steps, we can generate the due diligence statements for our customers. In a little bit more detail in our end-to-end process, it looks like this. We implement the products from our customers in this case that are bought on the EU market and then that our customers sell or export from the EU market. In a second part, that's where the supplier cooperation will be needed. What we do is that we send out a so-called product origin request to the suppliers, where we ask the suppliers for DDS information for these specific parts. And what we need there from the suppliers is that they, if they are the importers, conduct like the whole due diligence process for every product, are able to generate due diligence statements. that we can then reuse for referencing for our customers' DDS. And then next step, what I said is like that we have this risk assessment, meaning we send the supplier maturity assessment where we evaluate the robustness of the due diligence system of the suppliers. And what we do there is that we need to check and to verify that the suppliers are actually having a proper due diligence system that is in accordance to the law, so that we know, okay, the due diligence statement is actually compliant. And then we can also generate due diligence statements for our customers by referencing to the supplier DDS. And this is actually the goal for the whole process, so that the downstream operators can then generate due diligence statement referencing to their upstream due diligence statements. On the other side, for non-EU suppliers, it looks a little bit different, because what we need there is the geolocation data, meaning we need the polygons of the production plantations. As I said before, here it's very, very important that we need the proper geolocations of the raw commodities. For example, if we're talking about rubber products, if we send out a request for a rubber tire, for example, we do not need the geolocation of the production facility of the tire. No, we need actually the geolocations of the rubber, of the natural rubber that was used for the rubber tire. Then what we do is that we conduct the risk assessments. We check these geolocations that we received via satellite analytics to check whether there was illegal deforestation. And then we also check the producers for the compliance of the local legislation. In case that we find a risk, we would run risk mitigation actions like on-site audits or further assessments and so on. And only if everything is compliant, we can generate a due diligence statement for our supplier, for our customers. From the end-to-end approach, it looks very similar to the one before. We have like products that they import into the EU. In the supplier engagement, we send out the same request, but in this case, we need geolocation information instead of due diligence statement information. From the supplier, we will require the geolocation information of the EUDR commodities, and I will go more into detail later. But in general, we have like a portal where you will have the possibility to upload geolocations in form of files. You can draw them on a map. You can upload a GeoJSON code. This is completely up to you and your preference. I will walk you through this process in detail in the later stage of the workshop. I just wanted to give you like a first impression on how the whole process will look like. After we receive these geolocations, what we do is that we then run the deforestation checks. We also run the check of the producers, whether they are actually acting in compliance with the local legislation. And in case that we find some kind of breaches or some kind of risks, we would then use or initiate risk mitigation measures. For example, on-site audits or some trainings, in case that we can also, for example, enable the producers or the suppliers or so on acquire additional information via assessments. And the goal, last but not least, is that once we say, okay, the product is clear, because like all the EUDR requirements were given, the product or the part number is EUDR compliant, then we can forward all this information to the trace system via API, and then we can generate a due diligence statement for our customers. This, in the end, is the ultimate goal for reaching the EUDR compliance. As I said, this was like the general overview on how the end-to-end process works for Prewave customers, so that you also understand when your cooperation is needed, but also what happens before, what happens afterwards, and so on. And now I'm going to focus mainly on supplier engagement flow, walk you through the platform, and show exactly how everything works. So exactly, so I'm like today we are having this automotive webinar. As I said, like we started like with an introduction to the legal status quo, but also like to give you an overview and a walkthrough on how to use Prewave when you get a request from your customers. As I already mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, it will be recorded, and we are going to forward you the slides and also the recording afterwards. As a first step, what you usually get from Prewave via your customers is this so-called supplier maturity assessment. This is divided into two parts. In the first part, we have like a readiness evaluation where we check, are you actually EUDR relevant, and how ready are you for EUDR? Meaning you could also answer, but I'm also going to walk you through that you're not EUDR ready at all. Just like to make an evaluation, which of the suppliers are actually EUDR relevant. In the second part, we then check the due diligence system for the robustness and to check whether we can rely on the supplier's due diligence systems in future. Now in more detail, like as I said, like the first part is a EUDR readiness evaluation. What we will require from you there is especially who is the EUDR responsible stakeholder at your company, because often also this is quite like a lot, it takes a lot of effort to find the person that will be defined as the one responsible for answering all the requests. And then there will be a few questions about, are you already EUDR ready? Are you even EUDR relevant? Are you already implementing your processes or still developing them, and so on? In case that you say, yes, you're already quite far ahead with your preparation and so on, we go one step further into the second step, where we evaluate how do you conduct the deforestation checks? How do you prove that the producers are acting in compliance with the local legislation? What risk mitigation measures are you actually enabling in case that you find a risk, and so on? Because we just have to be sure and to assure for our customers that they can trust their suppliers' due diligence statements before they reference those. This was just like a theoretical explanation, but now let me actually quickly jump into the platform. And it actually looks like this. You will receive an email like this that says, for example, in this case, I set up a dummy EUDR OEM supplier. And then you will see like here the company that is requesting this assessment from you. You will have some information about what this assessment is for. There is also like written that this is like a quick and also especially free assessment. So all our assessments are completely free for suppliers. And also when our customer expect you to fill it in. If I now go on complete the assessment, you will be forwarded to a site where in the beginning you will be asked to register yourselves. In case that you already registered with Prewave, you can just go and log in. Otherwise, what we just need is your first name, last name, a business email, and then just like set a password. That's a very quick registration process because we also wanted to reduce the effort for the suppliers. We just need to gather this information because the EUDR, for example, always requires that that companies can prove who was the responsible stakeholder for providing this information. In general, what we also have here is like just like some brief information about what the supplier self-assessments are, what is Prewave, who is using Prewave, and so on. We have also additional information in our help center where you can have like written and visual documentation on all the processes for Prewave. In this case, I will just log in with this dummy account that I set up. So in the first site, you will just have like some further details, some further clarification on what the EUDR or the supplier maturity assessment is about. In general, what we also included here is a quick definition, for example, on what small and micro-sized undertakings are. Here I have to say we will define this a little bit further because like for now we call it SMEs, but SMEs could obviously also be small and medium-sized enterprises. So we're going to adapt it. In this case, what we mean are small and micro-sized undertakings as defined in Article 38.3 of EUDR. And they have like this delayed deadline for the end of June 2026. And they count as, so companies count as SMEs, so micro-sized undertakings, if they meet less than 2 of these conditions, meaning of the balance sheet total of 5 million, the turnover 10 million, and average number of employees of 50. If you then continue further, what you will see here is we will ask for the responsible stakeholder who wants to fill in this information. We have here then the possibility to answer whether a due diligence system is already in place. You can answer with yes, no, partially implemented, or not. I will just like walk you through the 2 extreme scenarios. One is that you don't have a due diligence system in place yet. Then we ask whether it will be ready by the end of the year. If you also say no here, it will ask whether you will have one ready after 2025. If you still say no, then we would require some information. For example, do you not operate in the EU, so you're not going to generate due diligence statements? Are you a micro-sized undertaking? You don't have any EUDR relevant products because, for example, you only use synthetic rubber and so on. This is just very relevant for our customers so that they can also define what they can expect from what suppliers. In case that instead, I will just like walk through this scenario now. If you are already EUDR ready and are also located in the EU, meaning you have to generate due diligence statements, you would say yes and yes. And what we do then is that you are forward to the second part of the SMA. This is like the big part where we actually evaluate how robust your due diligence system is. So what we need from you there are some informations that actually cover all the requirements from the law. For example, I mean, like we ask you, for example, whether you collect all the data, which demonstrates that the products are deforestation free. If you say yes, you will have a drop down with a description of the product, goods, and so on. But also, one second. For example, if you also say that you check for the deforestation, that the products are deforestation free, we will have a drop down where we ask you, okay, which technology are you using, so that we can actually verify also those. Then there were also like additional drop downs asking for some evidence regarding all these questions. For example, that you upload some screenshots of actual deforestation checks and so on. So just like for us to have some proof that you're really conducting those checks. We have these checks for all the different scenarios or all different steps that are necessary for being EUDR compliant. And I mean, like we obviously are fully aligned to the legal requirements of the law. We are not asking you for additional information just to make sure that you are fully EUDR compliant. And also down here, if, for example, we say yes and yes, what we ask you then is here, like just like some proof or some explanation on what you do for the third-party rights, for securing that labor rights are considered, and so on. It's, in my opinion, quite straightforward. If you need additional information, we have an extensive help center where we have like all the documentations and articles for all these points. Now, let me go back to the presentation. And this is the supplier maturity assessment. As I said, this is like the first step that we send to our suppliers because we first want to evaluate how ready are the suppliers, and also are they already or are they even EUDR relevant? Because for our customers, obviously, if they can automatically exclude suppliers because they only use synthetic rubber, and then they know, okay, from these ones, we only have to ask for the proof or evidence that they use synthetic rubber, they can also cluster the suppliers accurately. A very important point, if you have to generate due diligence statements, we already experienced that many companies, even nowadays, are not even registered in the traces system of the EU. The EU traces system is an official system where you will be required to generate all the due diligence statements in the future. So even if you are using a software that has an API connection to traces and can generate due diligence statements for your company, you still need to be registered there. And that's what many companies still nowadays don't know, is that you anyway will need to register. We also have like a very short explanation on how to do it, with also like some additional links to the trace system, but also on a documentation on how to actually conduct the registration and so on. And in the end, it's like a quite straightforward 4-step approach, but just like you should definitely be sure that you have an account there. Otherwise, you will not be able to generate any due diligence statements, not via a software provider. So from the process, once you are registered in traces, and then also you went through the first part of supplier readiness, and we at Prewave evaluated, okay, this company is EUDR ready and also EUDR relevant. What will happen is that you get this so-called product origin request. This is like the request where we will ask for the part numbers, whether you, what is the evidence or what's like the underlying EUDR information that we will need for proving EUDR compliance. In general, what we did for suppliers is that we established a supplier portal from which you will be able to centrally answer all the requests from all your customers that send a request via the Prewave network. Also, this portal is completely for free for you. And we just like developed it and are continuously improving it in order also to increase the efficiency for suppliers of Prewave customers, because we know that especially nowadays, with all this surge of new compliance topics like EUDR, CBAM, carbon footprint, EUDR and so on, the cooperation of suppliers is becoming essential. So we are also very motivated to create a very efficient approach for suppliers and not only for our customers. We also further develop this supplier portal for the different topics and always have like supplier contacts that are dedicated for the topics. As I said before, in the SMA, the first question is about who is the EUDR responsible at your supplier site. So in the future, our customers know all the requests go to this specific stakeholder. Our supplier success team has actually spent quite a lot of focus or quite a lot of time on actually finding out throughout the last 1.5 years of what are the main pain points for the suppliers of our EUDR customers. Because as I said, like we know the EUDR compliance stands and falls with the cooperation of the suppliers. We tried like to find out what are the main pain points, how can we increase the efficiency for suppliers, how can we create more sustainable relationships also with suppliers of our customers. We developed a quite extensive documentation. This help center. I can also like show it to you later, where we have also this written visual documentation. We conducted some webinars already with multiple customers, just like to also enable our suppliers and so on. So as I said, we just like went through the supplier maturity assessment, and now we have the supplier portal where you have the possibility to centrally answer the requests from all the customers that use Prewave for sending out requests. And in case that you are using Prewave yourself and you get like requests from your customers, you will also be able to map your products to your customers' products. So that automatically, if we generate a DDS for you, you can map it to a custom product and we can automatically fetch this information and you don't have to do anything anymore. So now we go to the extensive or one of the biggest chunks of the EUDR process with Prewave. This is like the so-called product origin request. As I mentioned before, that's where we gather the EUDR relevant information, meaning we gather the due diligence statements for the products that we need. We gather geolocation information if you are not operating within the EU, or you can also prove that the products are not EUDR relevant. In the first check, what we need our customer suppliers to conduct is actually to do a product relevance check. Meaning, obviously, if you have not done yet so, you will have to check, are my products actually really EUDR relevant, or are they maybe due to any exemption case? For example, what we have there that was defined by the EU, there are some cases that are not EUDR relevant. For example, due to the product composition, if products are fully composed by synthetic rubber, but it must be 100% synthetic rubber in this product. Same counts for recycled materials. We have an exclusion of these micro or small enterprises for until the end of June next year. Also, commodities produced before June 30 to 23 are fully excluded from the law. And then there is also like the sourcing during the transitional period, meaning if you bought a product in the EU market before the regulation enters into application, you only have to prove that you purchased it before the regulation entered into application. And in general, if there is like such an exceptional case present, it's very important that the EU said this is only viable if you can also prove that this is actually the case. Meaning, for example, if you say the product is fully composed of synthetic rubber, you need to provide proof of the product composition. So I don't know, like a BOM, or especially for the automotive industry, it would be an IMDS certificate. For the transitional period or also for the production date, you need some kind of proof that you produced it before, or that you also bought the product before, like via purchase order or something like this. For the micro undertakings, it's like some proof of the company size and so on. And here it's very important also like that the different stakeholders in the industries work together to also find out or to discuss what are the best evidences that can be standardized and can be used as a standard, because otherwise you will have to fight with different certifications. You will always have to have very individual approaches and processes. So in order to have like network effects and have an efficient approach, it's very important to find like some standard approaches here and some recurring possibilities. And in general, it's like very important because some companies already wanted like to provide us the information. This product is not EUDR compliant or not EUDR relevant, sorry. We can only accept that if we get proper evidence, because this is what the EU requires. And that's also what the EU will audit. meaning you cannot use an exceptional case if you cannot prove that this exception actually took place. Now, what I will do is that I will jump into this supplier portal in order also to show you how you can actually provide proof that this product is not EUDR relevant. One second, I'm quickly opening. So this looks very similar to the email for the supplier maturity assessment. Here you will just like have a little bit different information, because in this case it's a product origin request and not a supplier self-assessment. It's also free, as I said, and you get like some information about why it is required and what it will also require you to provide. Here the deadline can be different than for the SMA, but this depends highly on also the customer's expectations. If I now go on answering here the product origin request, actually, let me quickly close this so that I can show you it's actually very similar to the supplier maturity assessment, just because due to the cookies, I was still logged in. But again, it will ask you to register, or otherwise, if you already have an account, you can just like quickly log into it. And what you will see here are all the requests that you received from the different customers. Here you can see 3 different products for which you or this dummy account received a request. We have like here, for example, a rubber tire domestic with a specific product reference number with this specific HS code. Here you can see the customer that requested the information for these products. They can put in some information. For example, if they want to reference a specific PO or shipment or even another reference, this is completely up to the different business processes of customers and also suppliers. But for us, it's also like so that we can actually provide traceability for purchase order, shipments, or any other patterns. Here you can see that, for example, in this case, no origins were added for this request, and the date of the request was today, so the 9th of October. And then what you can also see is that here the status requested, meaning no information was provided so far. In general, if now I open it, you can see that you can either answer that this product is covered by a due diligence statement or not covered by a due diligence statement, and you have to provide geolocation information. For these 2 approaches, I will walk you through afterwards. For now, what we were discussing before is, for example, if you say the product is not EUDR relevant, for example, in the case that we have a synthetic product. But let me quickly use this one. For example, here I said it's a synthetic O-ring for tires. It's, I think, never the case that it's fully produced from synthetic rubber. So let's actually take it for an O-ring. Here, companies can, for example, answer that it's like made of recycled goods. We have always aligned here with the so-called tariff codes that were published by the EU, meaning that every exceptional case from the EU has a specific tariff code that is assigned that you would also need to put in the customs declaration. Here, for example, made out of recycled goods is the tariff code Y133. In this case, we say, okay, it consists of synthetic rubber. In this case, it would be Y129. And we just use a definition that was also defined by the EU. As I mentioned before, what we require you then is that you provide a comment and also a file. In this case, for example, I would say the attached IMDS certificate proves the 100% composition of synthetic rubber. Now I have to upload a file. It uploads the file, and now I can finish this request, and then I can send it back to my customer. This is how you can actually then kind of like reject the PR, because you say this product is not EUDR relevant, and then you also proved it by sending out back this certificate. We are going to do a plausibility check. The customer can then further continue with their checks, but it's necessary that we get this evidence per product, because this is also what you will require from all the companies. Now, quickly going back to the presentation. What is the other stream is that the product is EUDR relevant. What we have to do there is that we collect the EUDR information from the suppliers and producers of our customers. And there we have two different paths. The first one is the product is purchased on the EU market, meaning then what we need is that the supplier is due diligence approved, meaning this is the SMA part 2 that I explained before. And what we can do then is that we retrieve the due diligence statement reference number and verification numbers for the part numbers in the products. And then we can generate due diligence statements for our customers by referencing to the supplier's DDS. The risk assessment here is this part that we said, okay, we already evaluated that the supplier side has a very robust due diligence approach. The second approach is the bigger effort, I would say, because we have to collect the geolocations ourselves and the production information. The suppliers, if they do not have the information, they have to forward this request to their own suppliers until they reach the producer or someone who has a producer information. We have to conduct the deforestation and local legislation checks. And only once we say everything is EUDR compliant, we can actually approve the shipment and generate a due diligence statement for our customers, in this case, an import DDS. In the system, let me jump back, it looks like this. So as I mentioned before, we can either click here and answer a due diligence statement in this way, but here we have only the possibility to answer due diligence statements individually. So if you have multiple due diligence statements, I will show you another approach. We also enable the possibility to do a batch upload. One second, for example, I prepared here a batch share. Then what you can do is you upload the Excel upload. Here it checks whether it finds actually it finds corresponding due diligence statements. One second. Something I think. Okay, this is actually right now a bad example because duplicate DDS reference number for matched products. Yeah, because the problem is that I already, when I tried it before, I already uploaded it. 1 second. Okay, I think I messed up this test because I already uploaded it beforehand. And then you can see that the DDS were already uploaded. I mean, like in general, it's very easy. We upload the due diligence, the Excel. It takes out automatically. It's the matching via the product references or also via PO number or so on. And then it just like uploads the DDS automatically. It could like even be 100 ones at the same time. Please excuse this mix up. I just forgot that I already tested before and didn't set up the product newly. So, but in case you have any questions regarding this, we can obviously show it to you in a later stage. But as I said, you just upload the Excel and you only have to confirm. So that's like not a lot of process that you missed right now. The other option is that you, for example, can also upload the due diligence statement by actually uploading it like this. Let me quickly copy a verification number. And then it will fetch from the traces system. Now, this is like what we did is that we have a trace emulator, so as a traces simulator in order to provide any diligence statement. I think it's because I already uploaded the due diligence statement. Okay, now this is like a bad example, but okay. In general, what we do is that we fetch from traces whether the due diligence statement is actually available, and that we take all the information from there. We check the HS codes, whether they match each other. And in case that we say like, okay, the HS codes are matching from the commodity, we can reuse it. And then we fetch also the quantities and so on and can retract all the information. In case that you are not sitting in the EU, you would need to provide the geolocations. What we provide you here as an information is actually that we need the geolocation and production information for the EUDR commodities. I know I already mentioned it twice, but now for the third time, we really need the geolocations of the plantations of the raw commodities, not of the processing facilities. If you do not have this information, what you can do is that you forward the request, meaning in this case, you can just put in your the next chain in the supply chain, because we need like also the entity name. You have to put in the product name because, for example, if you provide, I don't know, like a rubber tire to our customer, it could be that you are purchasing natural rubber yourself, meaning you would have to transform the request so that it's adapted to your supply chain. Then what we need is production country or the country you are sending it to. So just like for us, so that we can trace it back. Once all this information is filled in, we can create a new request that will create a new link, and you can forward throughout your supply chain. In case that you have this information, or that you send it back to or up the supply chain throughout until your producer, what you can do here is that you can put in the country of production. For example, let's now, for example, take Thailand. You would need to put in the producer name. Let's, for example, take Tongtai Rubber. Here, this is like optional, but like, let's say a rubber plantation. We have to select a date. And then what you can do is that you either draw a geolocation on the map. This you can do by really zoom in. For example, you just like see this nice location down here. You can just like click on it, especially if you don't have like that many plantations that you have to put in. This is a quite feasible approach. It's actually mirroring the traces approach to provide geolocation information. Otherwise, what you can also do is that you upload a file, or you can also put in GeoJSON code like here, that you just like paste it in there. Once we saved it, you can see the origin was saved successfully. I can finish it here. And what you can do then is that we send it back to the customer. And you will see that this request was already answered then. So this is the full approach for sending back the information to your customers if you receive a POR via Prewave. And now I would just like quickly touch base on the technical integration possibilities. So in general, what we experienced in the especially in the recent past, or what's like very necessary, is there is like a lot of regulatory urgency, obviously, because like right now the deadline for EUDR is still this year, and there is like a lot of implementation pressure on all the industries, and especially also on the automotive industry, to actually be able to handle all these data transfers and so on until the end of the year. Especially with EUDR, there's so much data, and that is necessary, and so much traceability actually, to be sure to have like robust processes and so on. And this is also accompanied by very heterogeneous systems of the different entities, different organizations, but also actually within organizations, which obviously also make these whole data transfers and so on very inefficient, and also complicate an industry-wide compatibility. And in general, that's like what we are experiencing so far, which like are very big challenges to overcome in order to find automated approaches in the future, is actually are these missing data standards and also variable creation frequencies of the due diligence statements and so on. And it's very important, like that, especially in case that the EUDR will be postponed, the companies use this additional timeline to actually find a proper approach for reaching an efficient EUDR compliance as soon as possible. Now I can just like show how we at Prewave conducted like, or tried like to overcome these challenges. In general, what we do is that we break down the silos, especially for cross-organizational integrations, by also enabling especially real-time standardized collaboration across multiple corporate entities within organizations, but also across supply chains and so on. We are very much working with universal API connectivity. We are currently also working on some supplier API integration projects, because, as I already mentioned beforehand, the EUDR requires the cooperation and also the information gathering from suppliers and from the supply chains. And we know that like this, there is also efficiency needed for both parties, for our customers, but also for the supply chain and for suppliers, because otherwise there will be a lot of inefficiencies, and no one wants to sit there in 1 year and just like typing in everything manually. So in general, we try to automate and accelerate the data exchanges, and to especially like to remove the manual bottlenecks, as I just mentioned. We try to adapt, especially to the industry necessities, I would say. So like, because like every company or every stakeholder has its own individual necessities and requirements, but we believe it's very important to find also like a scenario or a process where every stakeholder wins. And we are very open and motivated to actually find such standardization, data standards, and also data formats for enabling a very efficient and streamlined approach to full EUDR compliance. For this reason, what we also did in the recent month, as I already mentioned, is that we started working on an EUDR supplier API approach, meaning we developed via RESTful APIs, very flexible API endpoints that enable you to retrieve the request information that you receive from customers via Prewave, directly via API from the Prewave system, and then you can answer it within your systems via API and send us the information back. In this case, you would not even need to go into the Prewave system. We have this documentation already publicly available. In case you are interested or want to look into it, we can forward it to you. It's also for free. Actually, that's it from my side. In this case, one second. Okay, because I'm just like looking into, I actually wanted to provide 1 second another time to see into it. Because I want to show you this process, and now I just generated a new one in the meantime so that you can see how it works. So again, we have like the same approach. What I do now is I do a batch share. And now you can see this due diligence statement was not uploaded so far. So what we have to do, it shows you like you have some error rows because like for these, we didn't find any information in the in the Excel sheet. We can delete those entries. And then for the other ones, what we do is that we can go to the next step. Here, you have just like to fill in the HS code because it did not find it in the DDS. In this case, you have to do it manually. Otherwise, if you have in the DDS this HS code integrated, you can see here is like a mistake because it's like 40011 instead of 401110. And you have to do it manually, but it already accepts, okay, it's still a synthetic rubber product. So you can manually adapt it. In case the HS code would be fitting, it would automatically use it. And then it answered it, and you can see another DDS was added to this product. So, but now getting back to the flow of our presentation, this was it actually from my side. Now we would open the floor for the open discussion. I don't know if also like from the other OEMs, someone already found so from Radoslav or Christina, if you found like a question that you want to answer, I didn't have the time while presenting to look into the Q&A. So I just like start to read now through them. So in general, what I see like as the first two questions, you wrote, can we please have a copy of this presentation sent to us via email? And could you share the presentation material after the webinar? Yes, we are going to share both the slides, but also the recording and also like the answers to these questions after the webinar with all of you. So I can already answer live, done. Can we use presentation of this meeting? I see yes, again, also already answered. So then I don't know, Radoslav, Christina, have you found a question you want to answer?
Maybe the question, I don't see it again. I search for it. Someone asked for what does BMW offer to proceed for the suppliers. I found it anymore, but yeah, we planned that we create an DDS over an annual basis, and yeah, therefore I think that make it easier.
Mm-hmm. So I've just seen like there is like a question towards you that says like, what does BMW offer to facilitate the process for the supplier when we have to enter each DDS number into the Prewave portal? I mean, like, maybe I can take it unless you want to take it.
Yeah.
Okay, should I take it?
Yeah, you
In general,
can take it. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, like as I said, like what all stakeholders, I would say, like now realize is you have to find like an efficient approach for all stakeholders involved in EUDR because you are also relying on the information that you can gather. So what we are doing is that we, as I showed you, like what we offer already is like this Excel upload, this batch upload of multiple DDS at once. And what we also do is, as I showed you before, we started creating this supplier API endpoint. So if you're interested, we could set up a meeting and we can walk you through on how you can actually also create a technical integration to Prewave. And you can fetch all the requests from our system to your system, for example, for BMW. And the API call is just like, for example, Prewave, give me all the requests from BMW. We send them over to you. You can just like pre-fill them with all the necessary DDS information, and we then automatically verify it and so on and can use it for BMW. In this case, you would have an automated, a quite automated approach. You would just like need to connect to our API endpoints. I hope this answers your questions. Otherwise, feel free to comment to that. Then I see like as the first question about plastic components plastic components. I mean, like in general, if you are not using HS codes that are EUDR relevant, you can also just like communicate so already during the SMA flow that I mentioned to you beforehand. So if you get supplier maturity assessment via Prewave, you have the possibility to say, no, we will not be EUDR compliant because, and then you can just like explain, we are only using those and those HS codes. None of those are, for example, EUDR compliant. What we as Prewave do is that we give this information to our customers and they then can define whether they agree with that. A big problem that we so far encountered is that often companies have a different allocation of HS codes, which in a utopical world should not be possible because every product has only one unique accurate HS codes, but we still encounter many times where they diverge, meaning it could be that your customers have an HS code that is EUDR relevant, while you use another one that is not EUDR relevant. In this case, you would just have to find like the proper, like an agreement on which one is the correct one. And that's what you would need to discuss with your customers. But what we would suggest, if you say none of our products are EUDR relevant, put it in the SMA, and then you can go for the next step and don't have to answer every single part number. Then for the next question, how do you classify suppliers in EU and non-EU? For example, would you classify an Asian supplier with a EU registered company that sells the goods as EU? Well, this actually really depends on the transaction itself. Meaning, you could be an Asian supplier which is sitting in Asia and sells goods in the EU. Sometimes, if you are the importer officially, then you count as an EU supplier because you are the one providing the goods in the EU market. If instead you have companies from Europe that purchase the goods from you in Asia and they import them, you are a non-EU supplier. So EU is basically the operator that makes the product available in the EU market and has to generate a due diligence statement. Non-EU are actually companies that sell products that are EUDR relevant, but do not cross them through the customs, and so also never have to generate a due diligence statements themselves. And that's what I say in this case, our customers cannot expect a due diligence statement, but they need the geolocation information of the plantations so that they then conduct all the risk assessments and they can verify that the product is EUDR compliant. Otherwise, they cannot sell those products or buy them anymore. Okay. So I've seen like also, have you already started the SMA or do you plan to request it later? When do you expect to do so? So in general, this depends on your customer's approach. And like, as I said, like there's an anonymous webinar, so I cannot see from which customer you were sent. Some customers already sent it to all of their suppliers. Others didn't do so far. But if you are a participant of this webinar, you can expect that an SMA will be forwarded quite soon because some of the OEMs that participated today use this webinar as a kickoff for their project and to send it like to a broader audience. Okay, I don't want to take the stage all myself. So if you want to step in, someone, Raslav or Christina, to answer a question, feel free to do so. Otherwise, I can also continue.
Yeah, please continue.
Perfect. So the next question is, when do you plan to run the service? Will we get one survey for all of your customers, or will it be separate service for each of your customers? So also there we have to differ. So the supplier maturity assessment, which is just a generic assessment of your EUDR readiness and also your EUDR due diligence robustness. We send it once per year to the supplier sites. There we leverage the networking effect, so different customers can have access to the results. They can see whether we say, okay, this is a very strong due diligence system of the supplier side or not, but they cannot access the specific answers that you gave. For customers that did not request the SMA, if they want to see the specific answers, they would just like for free request this access via Prewave, and you can with one click just like give them access to it. Regarding the product origin requests, we would need those on a product basis, meaning for every customer, we need you to send like the product origin request individually, because obviously we cannot guarantee that for the same product you can use the same supply chains for different customers. But what you can do is that you just like upload the same evidence for this same product. For example, by this batch upload via the Excel, what you can do is that you just like only map it based on the HS code, for example, or based on the product reference, and then you can just like do the mapping like this and mass upload the information. The next question is, what when we are only using synthetic rubber for the customers requested us for EUDR, but also using natural rubber for other customers? Well, in this case, as I mentioned before, we still need like the evidence per product. Meaning, for example, I mean, like as I said, like I know that like for rubber tires, there are no rubber tires that are 100% made out of synthetic rubber. For O-rings, for example, this could be the case. What we do is we send you a request for an O-ring and also for a tire. If, for example, a customer is only using synthetic rubber, you can just like for their products, always upload the evidence for the different products that they are made out of synthetic rubber. And for the other customers, you can upload the EUDR relevant information, like the geolocation information or the due diligence statements and so on. I hope this answers the question. But as I said, also, if you say you're not relevant, you still need to provide always evidence on a product basis. Because obviously, if you say you only use synthetic rubber, if you provide the proof for only one product out of 100, we don't know whether the other 99 products are really made out of synthetic rubber, and the EU is going to request this evidence. Okay, then does Prewave tool take into account the country classification and different requirements depending on the classification, low, standard, high? This is even more relevant because now there is the proposal to create a fourth category, zero risk. Exactly. So I'm not fully aware that there is already a proposal, to be honest. I know that there are like many discussions going on, and especially many political parties requesting this fourth category for EU member states, for the US, maybe even for China. I can just tell you, we always adapt to the regulatory updates, meaning currently how we run the system is that we obviously like take into consideration the risk country benchmark, meaning for low risk countries, you only have to gather the geolocation. You don't really need to conduct the satellite checks or also to check the producers. For standard and high, you have to do all the risk assessments. So as I said, we are always up to date with the legal requirements. If there is a proposal for a fourth category, we will definitely already start developing like the necessities in the background. But until there is no final decision and it's not legally binding, we will not enable it in our system, I have to say, obviously. In general, I have to say, we are always fully legally backed by our legal advisor, Taylor Wessing, which was mentioned before by Radoslav, so that we can always guarantee that you will reach compliance by using our tool. Next question, do we need to register in traces if we are only using synthetic rubber? Actually, no, because if you only use synthetic rubber, then what you need to provide is just like the proof that you are using synthetic rubber. That's what the EU communicated so far. We actually don't know exactly because, like, for example, from this, there is one exceptional case, the transitional period. If you purchase products during this transitional period, so meaning since the 29th of June to 23 until the law enters into application, There you will have a dummy DDS that you will generate for those products. For the other exceptional cases, like synthetic rubber, there is none such dummy DDS communicated so far. So how we interpreted it, but also our legal advisor, is that you will just have to prove with evidence that this is synthetic rubber. Meaning, if you want to have the customs clearance for a product that is produced fully of synthetic rubber, you can just provide your INDS certificate or a BOM or something like this, and then it will be automatically cleared. That's the current status quo. We don't know whether it's going to change in the future. There is no need to register a new trace if the company is counted as SME, as SMEs don't have to submit own DDS as long as one can refer to a previous DDS. Well, I mean, like this is partly true. If you're an SME trader, and now I'm not talking about small or micro-sized undertakings, but about small or medium-sized undertakings, meaning I think the thresholds are 250 employees, 18 million turnover, and 40 million balance sheet. Then what you can do is if you are purely trading goods, meaning you buy them from your supplier and you sell them in the same format, you do not transform them, then you are allowed to forward the DDS from your supplier to your customer. If you are an SME operator, meaning you, for example, buy a product and transform it into a new product, or if you are an SME company that imports product into the EU market, you don't have any exceptions. You count as an non-SME operator and have also to submit all your due diligence statements in the traces system, and therefore you also need to register. As I said, the only exclusion is if you are an SME and you only trade the goods that you get to your customers and do not transform in the process, and you also buy those goods on the EU market and sell them again on the EU market or export them. If our products HS codes are all out of scope of EUDR, will any submission specific to the product outside of our products not EUDR relevant be required in the system? Exactly. So what I showed you, like in the what you do like in this SMA, where we have like this answer, our products are not EUDR relevant, is that our customers get the information, okay, the supplier has only not EUDR relevant products. If your products are due to the HS codes still in scope, we will need to send you some requests so that you can prove for these specific products with evidence, for example, as I said, like a synthetic rubber certificate or so, that they are not in scope of EUDR, even though the HS code is. If you say your products' HS codes are not EUDR relevant because they are not in scope of the Annex 1 of the legislation, you will not be required to provide any proof, because then you can just like provide to your customers only just like argue with them or just like showcase them that your HS code allocation is correct. And so these products do not fall into the scope of EUDR. Now, I think, Christina, this may be a question for you regarding BMW requests. Will the requests be created to every shipment? I can take a glass of water.
No, we ask for the part number and then for the planning annual quantity.
Exactly. And what we in general develop is kind of like a flexible request possibility. So that, for example, if BMW requests these the evidence on a yearly basis, for example, we allow suppliers to upload the evidence in their own frequency. Meaning if you create the evidence on a weekly basis, you can just like continuously upload this evidence so that BMW can use it like on a yearly basis. But we do it like on a very flexible way, because we know that the frequencies diverge between the different stakeholders in the supply chains. Let's see, are the requests sent to each legal entity or each site? Well, yes, because we always have to take the contractual partner of our customer, because this entity is the one responsible and by law required to provide the EUDR information. Meaning, if you belong to a big group, we cannot just send it to us to always to the same site, because they might not even know about this transaction. So we have to always reach out to the sites that are actually by law binded to provide these the necessary information. What is API connectivity? So what we mean with API connectivity is that we are continuously improving our API possibilities so that our customers, but also suppliers, can do an automated approach towards EUDR compliance, because obviously we know, like, with all this due diligence statement generation and so on, I mean, like, hands down, no one wants to sit down there in the future and like have to fill in the due diligence statements manually into Prewave or also into traces and so on. So what we do is to continuously increase the automation possibilities for our platform so that both the customers but also suppliers can use Prewave in an automated approach. And as I said, like we also showed you, like before, we prepared a documentation, like a handout of the EUDR supplier APIs with Prewave that we can obviously share with whoever is interested. This is obviously usually only required on, recommendable when you have like a higher number of products. If you only supply 1 or 2 products to your customers, we would definitely recommend to do it manually, because doing the technical integration also requires some development capacities and so on. Can you please elaborate on SAP connection, especially R3? So basically what we use is, for EUDR specifically, are so-called RESTful API endpoints, meaning these are very flexible endpoints where you can decide yourself which you want to use, for example, as a customer, for uploading data into the system, for triggering requests, for submitting due diligence statements, for getting back due diligence statements. We use this because it's very flexible to decide for the companies flexibly what they want to trigger via API and what they want to do manually. Especially with EUDR, there is this big problem that so many different divisions are affected. You have the customs departments who usually have their own SAP module, like, I don't know, SAP GTS. You have your procurement departments who need also to be involved in EUDR because they need to get the information when they purchase products from their suppliers. They usually use SAP Ariba. You have the aftermarket departments, which they need to put like the due diligence statement reference number and the shipment confirmation and so on. So these are like many different SAP modules. Often we work even together with customers that even use different ERP systems in the organization due to M&A or whatever. Meaning what we do is we use these standardized RESTful API endpoints with which you can make a connection from any entity, from any ERP system, and also from any ERP module. Can we have API documents after this meeting also? Yes, definitely. We can forward this information to you. Please just reach out and request this API documentation so that we can actually also send it out to the specific interested stakeholders, I would say, so that we can also like give you some additional information. Do you foresee an interface to OSapiens? So we don't have a standard connection to OSapiens or so, but as I said, like we have this very flexible RESTful API endpoints in order to also enhance and increase the automation to different stakeholders. I mean, like we are open to share this information with any entities, just like in the sake of creating an efficient approach towards automated EUDR compliance. If our company does not produce products containing EUDR-related materials, do we still have to perform the EUDR due diligence within our supply chain to state we are compliant? No, if you do not produce any EUDR-related materials or are not EUDR affected, EUDR relevant, you can already in the SMA state this, and then our customers know, okay, they don't need to send you like the specific requests. But as I said also before, if you, for example, say that you are not EUDR affected because you only use synthetic rubber, you still will need to deliver this evidence to your customers, because they, in case of an audit, need to provide proof that they actually checked that their products were really purely made out of synthetic rubber. Okay, I see that we are running out of time. We only have 7 minutes left. Let me quickly answer another question now. What about the weight difference between imported goods, actual weights, and OEM request nominal weight from drawing? I don't fully understand what you mean with nominal weight from drawing. In general, what we do, I mean, like, is we fetch by per default the information about the weights from the due diligence statements that we get. For example, if you have like an import DDS and there is like 1,000 kilograms indicated in DDS, we can fetch it from traces. This is the default way that we fetch as Prewave. But what we are currently also implementing is like the possibility or grooming the possibility that also companies can then declare no, only a specific amount goes to a specific customer that can then be used. Okay, I see the next question is like seems to be a small technical error. Did you say you have two different customers approaching us with Prewave? I am not able to see all requests in one screen. And you have two different separate links. This must be like a mistake with the setting. If you could either reach out within the supplier portal, you have the possibility to open a chat where you can also ask questions or make like an inquiry. Once you wrote us, we can then also enable you to see both customer requests. This seems to be a setting problem because we obviously have always to secure it to be safe that not the wrong stakeholders can see the requests from other entities. So we have like some safety mechanisms there, and it seems that there was like something went slightly wrong, but there's no issue. Either you reach out via the chatbot, or you can always reach out via the supplier success email that is also like in the bottom of the supplier portal. This is very straightforward and easy. So I mean, like we still have 23 open questions. We answered 23. I think like this is actually a very good point to move on to the closing remarks. Anyway, we are going to also answer the last 23 questions after the webinar. And when we share the recording and also the slides with you, we are also going to answer the open questions and share also these answers with all of you. In general, I think it was a very good and productive webinar. I hope all of you agree with it. I mean, like we cannot see it because you cannot, you are not LinkedIn panelists. But as a first thing, I want to very much thank Radoslav and also Christina and Dennis who had to leave before for the participation. I hope that you also agree that it was very productive. And I don't know if you have like any closing remarks towards the automotive industry as a whole or also to your specific suppliers.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Right. Yeah. At the end, I just want to thank you, Prewave, to prepare such a webinar. Yeah, where you explain your possibility, your system possibility. I have to admit that some of the task was good for me to repeat once again. Yeah, and as I mentioned in the beginning, we are now waiting to really use the final steps. We're going to send a PR to our supplier, and we will see how it works in the end. Yeah, I hope it will work like you present, and I believe it will be like that. And yeah, for those questions, some of question was directly to you, yeah, about the system, but some of the question was quite important, and I'm pretty thankful that you reply instead of them, instead of me or maybe BMW members. Well, I have to admit you are definitely better expert in this area. Yeah, thank you very much anyway.
Yeah, I think this is the result of 1.5 years of quite many sleepless nights thinking about EUDR.
Yeah, everybody had a headache.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for the kind words. And I don't know, Christina, do you also have some last remarks?
Yes. Thank you for the good webinar, Fabio. And yeah, I think we are on the track, but we have many challenges, and together with Prewave, I think we can handle it. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We are also very very sure that we are going to handle all of that. In general, just like also some last remarks from my side. I mean, like as I said, like most of you are aware, there are again like these rumors for postponement. For me, it's quite a déjà vu from last year, to be honest. Last year, the preparation level of the companies was even worse, obviously, than it is now. But what we still see is that like that there is still so much to do to actually reach a full and efficient and especially automated compliance. And I don't say it like to drive urgency for you to, I don't know, like to adopt a software solution or something like this. just like also most companies that we talk to still need to figure out like the best settings internally, the responsibility allocation within their organizations, define specific processes on how they can integrate the EUDR compliance into their business as usual processes. And that's why we actually really want to also ask your request from you to actually try to continue pursuing like the EUDR compliance as fast as possible, still to be the best positioned or in the best position to lead a very fully compliant and transparent supply chain in the future. And we strongly believe that the cooperation throughout the whole industry is actually the key to reach such a successful compliance in the end.
Yeah, if I may, just regard this possible postponement, to be honest, I really hope it will not be postponed, because as you mentioned, after so many sleepless nights, I'm pretty sure we are finally ready to, let's say, close this issue or close this task and move on for other legislation which are, right behind the doors.
Definitely, we see it the same way. And the most important thing like is, if it should happen, it's not a full stop. That's like super important. It's like rather a window of opportunity to actually reach compliance. But with nowadays uncertainties, let's see. Currently, we still pursue like the full compliance with our customers, and we are very assured that is like the necessary step forward. Okay, unless you want to add something to that, I think I would close the webinar. We are perfectly on time, actually. It's 4:30. So again, thank you very much for the participation. And unless you have a last word to say, I would close the webinar.